20 years after the original Age of Wonders, the franchise has put out its fifth game, Planetfall, doubling down on mixing 4X and tactical turn-based combat, this time in a futuristic setting. Age of Wonders Planetfall was played on Windows, and a review key was kindly provided by the publisher, Paradox. Planetfall embraces Age of Wonders' past and the series' mechanics, but has allowed the Dutch developers at Triumph Studios to experiment in new directions with a new setting, factions, and storytelling. Yes, storytelling in a 4X game. It really is a brave new world for anyone who has so far only played Civilization, or anyone who chooses the Assembly faction in Planetfall. 4X games are notoriously slow or long-winded, and the inclusion of tactical turn-based combat does mean the game can end up taking even longer. But Planetfall's main game plays fairly fast, both in terms of mechanics and progress, but also simply in terms of the wait time, as the AI makes its choices. Some other games gets around that last issue by using concurrent turns, but even for a 4X with sequential turns, Planetfall doesn't make you wait much, and nowhere near as much as certain others. Combat is, as mentioned, tactical turn-based, but more importantly, often perfectly safe to skip. Play the matches that matter, or the ones where you're looking to just escape with whatever units you can, and let the rest auto-resolve. No, the auto-resolve isn't perfect, and sometimes it'll win encounters you were sure to be lost, no matter who played them, and other times it'll throw a match where the game insisted it was safe. But these are extreme cases, and rare, and on average it seems to even out. You outfit armies of up to 6 units, optionally including heroes that can extend the abilities of regular units. Heroes lend the game an RPG-light feel, with levels and skills that grow over time, and both they and the basic units can be outfitted with mods to improve some aspect of them. Range unit can benefit from better aim, more range, or simply bullets that go through walls, while you might want some teleportation for those melee folks. For the heroes, you can super optimize them for a role, selecting their weapons, mods, and skills all to focus on a single aspect like psionics, or just pile on randomly because why not? Fun comes when you get multiple armies surrounding an enemy army and let them all join in the fight. Suddenly go from a 6v6 to a total of 42 units on the field, split between the two sides in some fashion, and get some truly epic encounters, whether it's because you're throwing masses of late game units at each other, or you brought along 2 stacks of cannon fodder to meat shield your main force in a tough fight. Be aware though that some fights can only be with just the one army, but at least you can still throw some base units at the enemy to soften them up a bit. Factions in the game follow pretty standard lines with this sort of thing, though the space elves don't really have pointy ears this time around. You got your default humans in the Vanguard, who used to run the galaxy in the form of the Star Union, and who got all the fancy toys. Also lots of weird secrets and plot twists, because why not? Up next is the Kirko, aka the Bug Infestation, who used to have a Buck Queen, who telepathically controlled them. Now there's no hive mind, but still lots and lots of bugs to play with. A bunch of women got stranded on a planet when the Star Union accidentally fell apart, and they did the only reasonable thing and put lasers on all the animals. No, really. The Amazons made the poor dinos fight for them while they played with bows. And you can't have space elves without space dwarves, so enter the on-the-nose named Dwarf. Really good at blowing shit up without blowing themselves up. They are perhaps not as easy mode as the Vanguard, but more fun. And because humans, there's the Syndicate, who just wants to trade and betray, like all rational people. And slightly more freakishly, you got the Assembly, who played a few too many games of Cyberpunk and ended up making too many modifications to themselves. Different playstyles, both good at not staying dead. Of course, each come with their own stories and reasons for killing the other factions, and then there are commanders forming factions within factions, so you got some fratricide or nephewcide or whatever. The game hits pretty much every note it tries to play. The 4X gameplay flows well, the combat is well executed, but with some minor annoyances. The factions are fairly balanced and sufficiently unique, and the storylines varied and in places quite different from any other 4X games. Campaign mode has you going through the different factions and learn what makes them tick, why they fight, and how. It's also both fairly boilerplate story bits and more outrageous missions where you're chasing a 100-year-old penguin that ate your pet. A single studio keeping a franchise alive this long is kinda impressive, but there are places, especially around the UI UX, where the game feels outdated and awkward or slow to use. On the whole, there's room for some quality of life improvements that other 4X games have had time to discover, and I can only hope Paradox and Triumph include some work here in the 3 announced DLC packages. But any fans of 4X or tactical turn-based combat should feel right at home, and if you're into both genres or really just played a lot of other games from Paradox, I can't see a reason to not get Age of Wonders Planetfall. And the scores? Design, we gave it a 7. The visuals are good, pretty clear, and factions visually distinct as well as mechanically separate. The 4X gameplay flows well with its own unique approaches to things like territorial ownership and defenses, while the combat comes across as fairly standard fare but lifted up by the RPG elements. Challenge 8. There's definitely plenty of challenges with the varied and, dare I say, non-standard ways to victory, along with the story-based challenges and simply options to set up your own scenarios. Add in mods and it should be a while before you find it all too easy. Fun 8. The storylines are diverse, if at points a bit tropish. Some of the stories in the campaign are outright absurd, but in a good way, and there's room for a good chuckle. Also, I'm still not over the murder penguin. Longevity 8. This is very playstyle dependent in many games, more so in Planetfall due to the combat mechanics. If you just played the campaign bits and skip most fights, you'll still be looking at a high double-digit number of hours. Add in mod support, custom scenarios and so on, and the sky's the limit. If you're into this gameplay, the only element that will stop you is tiring out and the occasional outdated design elements. Price 6. Steam and GOG has had the Windows version since early August, and you can either get it for about 50 bacon tokens and the 3 DLC season pass for another 40-ish monies, or the whole thing plus a cosmetic package for commanders for 90 beer tokens for the premium edition. Over on consoles, PS4 and Xbox One, it's the same story. Not the cheapest game, but not expensive either. Overall, we scored it a 7.4 out of 10.